Right, it's a brand new year and we have a brand new Labor leader, Chris Hipkins, with us. And I say brand new because apparently he's lost a bunch of weight for election year. Chippy, looking good. Good morning.
Good morning, Ryan. How are you?
Very well, thank you. You've had a good break?
I've had a good break. Although, to be fair, the 10 kilos that I've lost in the last 6 months, it hasn't just happened over Christmas. If anything, sort of plateaued a bit over the Christmas break with all the cheese and crackers. But since about July last year, I have been on a diet. So there you go.
Good on you. And what's happened to the Coke Zeros?
This Coke Zero has no calories in it. So Coke Zero is completely compatible with the diet that I've been on.
So
I have been a bit more of a regular visitor to the gym as well.
Okay, so we can rule out Ozempic.
Absolutely.
Whenever anyone loses any weight now, everyone's going, is it Ozempic? Are they on Wegovy? Okay, good to know. Hey, let's crack into it. We've got a lot to discuss. It's election year. We'll start with the weather and this bipartisan approach to resilience and to dealing with weather-related issues. You happy to work with the government on all that stuff?
Of course, I support a bipartisan approach to dealing with climate change as we can, but bipartisanship shouldn't mean doing nothing, which seems to have been the case for the last 2 years, where the current government just stopped doing everything that the previous government had started. And now, 2 years on, they're saying, oh, we've got to do this and we've got to do that and we've got to do this. Well, we've had 2 years worth of delays and cancellations, and ultimately, 2 years of progress that could have been made hasn't been.
So you'll bring back all your climate stuff that they stopped?
We'll set out our own policies in due course. Of course, we're 2 years on now. There's different pressures and challenges now, but we did set up, for example, the $6 billion Climate Resilience Fund, which was about fixing up our infrastructure so that it's ready when these severe weather events happen. Because once upon a time, they were once in a lifetime sort of shock events. They're now happening all of the time.
Chris, the Labor Party has a proud history of signing free trade deals. You know, Helen Clark and Phil Goff on China. Look at the incredible results that has garnered for this country. You haven't indicated yet whether you'll support this India FTA, because New Zealand First is not, but surely you will.
I have been pretty clear. We support New Zealand getting a free trade agreement with India. It will be going before our caucus, our team of MPs. We'll be discussing it today. Several of our MPs have been briefed on some of the detail that hasn't yet been made public. And so they'll go through that with our team today so that we can then provide feedback to the government on where we're likely to land. But we have been very supportive of New Zealand's trading agreements in the past. And of course, we'll continue to be so. But we've got some questions about this one that we need to understand the details of before our team lands on its final decision.
What specifically are you worried about?
I think there's two main areas for us. One is looking at the immigration, agreement, and whether or not that actually results in additional migration to New Zealand, or whether it's simply, already catered for by a migration we're expecting anyway. We want to look at the investment requirement, the requirement for New Zealand to invest in India, and what that ultimately means, because that's relatively novel. We haven't seen that in many of our trade agreements previously. And then, of course, we've got the regular questions, such as, was a better deal for dairy possible? Current government say it isn't, and we have to accept them at face.
Well, I mean, you look at other countries around the world, and I mean, no one's got better than what we got. So I guess you could. But when you say additional migration, would it concern you if there was additional migration? Do you not want additional migration from India?
I think the question really is around New Zealand's overall immigration settings, and whether we are building the infrastructure and whether we're equipping ourselves to cope with population growth. I get really concerned about the immigration debate, that it can very quickly become quite a lightning rod, and I don't want it to become a lightning rod. But we've grown a lot in recent years, and that's been very good for New Zealand. It's been good for us economically. It's brought a lot of people with skills and passions and so on to New Zealand, and that's been healthy. But I think we can all see that we haven't built enough houses, we haven't built enough transport, we haven't built enough infrastructure to cope with that population growth. So we need to make sure that in our debates around immigration, that we're allowing for, us to be prepared to accommodate additional people if that's what we're going to do.
Are you considering an immigration cap?
We haven't set out our immigration policy for this year's election. We're working through that at the moment.
Is that on the table?
Finalised. What my overall objective here is not to necessarily say we shouldn't have immigration, because actually I think immigration is healthy for New Zealand. We're a country of migrants, and our migrant community contributes an awful lot. And frankly, most of us are descended from migrants, and so we should always celebrate that. But we've got to make sure that we are setting ourselves up to thrive. And that does mean being honest about the fact that we've brought in a lot of extra people into the country and we haven't actually prepared ourselves to cope with that growth.
I wonder how, so you're actively considering a cap on immigration. I wonder how Winston would feel about that, cutting his lunch.
Well, you've just literally made that one up, Ryan.
Well, you didn't rule it out. I mean, what am I meant to do?
Well, ruling things out doesn't mean that not ruling things out doesn't mean that we're actively considering them either. I think that you're taking a bit of creative license there.
So you're not considering it?
Well, as I've said, I haven't actually spent a lot of time looking at the immigration policy yet, so hasn't not been top of the list.
All right, very good. Let's stay with Winston. Well, actually, let's go to Te Pāti Māori and then come back to Winston. So Te Pāti Māori wants to ban or abolish prisons. You've come out and said, nah, not happening if I'm PM. Fair enough. What about your previous policy of reducing the population?
The prison population will be what it needs to be in order to keep the community safe. So we're not going to have any arbitrary targets around reducing the prison population. Do we want to do more around crime prevention? Yes, because if we have fewer people committing crime, then we will end up with fewer people in prison. But we need to start at the crime prevention end.
So do the crime, do the time. You're not going to have a policy of getting prisoners out.
No, I mean, we do want to do a better job of rehabilitation, because there's a lot of prisoners who end up cycling through prison.
100%.
They're out and then they're in, and then they're out and they're in. We've got to do better at rehabilitation.
Yeah.
We also have to look very closely at issues like remand. A lot of people are ending up in prison on remand for a long period of time while they wait to have their day in court. And if we can do more to speed that up, that's going to be better for everyone, particularly better for the victims who end up spending a lot of time waiting to have their day in court as well.
Can't argue with that. Now, let's come to Winston, because even Debbie at Te Pāti Māori is saying they could work with Winston Peters if it means getting rid of the coalition government. Now, I find it so hard to see a world where Te Pāti Māori is happy to work with Winnie, but Chippy won't tell us either way.
You've got to remember, Te Pāti Māori spent 9 years in coalition with the National Party, so this is not entirely a new territory for them. I've said that we'll set out before the election where we've got areas in common with other parties, where we could work constructively with other parties, and the things that are just no-go zones for us. Now, other parties have only just started setting out their campaign platform for the election, so I think it's too soon to do that. And ultimately, voters determine the makeup of the next parliament. My message really clearly is, if you want to change the government and you want that to be a good, strong, stable government, then vote Labour.
World Health Organization, do we stay in? Do we get out? Does it need reforming?
We have to stay in the World Health Organization. We spend, if you think about what New Zealand contributes to the World Health Organization, it's a tiny fraction of what Winston Peters lobbied for in terms of tax breaks for tobacco companies. So, we make a very small contribution and we get a lot out of it. And in fact, when he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs in our government, Winston Peters lobbied for more money for international aid, including for organisations like the World Health Organization.
Appreciate your time this morning. Looking forward to our debates throughout the year. Chris Hipkins, the Labour leader, with us. A trimmed down version